On today's show, it's game one of the playoffs Monday night versus the Habs. And big questions out there. Who's going to be in net? And is Aliaksei Protas going to be in the mix? I'll discuss all of that and much more next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about which players are going to be in and which players are going to be out. It's not a good time of the season to be answering these questions. And with Ethan Bear getting called up, it really draws into question if Marty Faravari will be in the mix. I'll talk about that a bit later. Alexe Protas, a player that has put up 30 goals this season, a career high in goals, is a question mark. What's the latest? But then a little bit later, I'll talk about who is going to be in net in game number 1. Is it going to be Logan Thompson? Is it going to be Charlie Lindgren? That is where we will start tonight, talking about who is going to be in net for the Capitals in game 1. And like I said, this is not optimal timing. And this is all kind of part of the position that the Capitals are in because they didn't make any big moves at the trade deadline. And I know that you can't live your life in the rearview mirror saying woulda, coulda, shoulda. They didn't. The Capitals traded and acquired Anthony Beauvillier, and that is it. And why is that? Because the vibes surrounding this team were so great, and we don't want to touch the chemistry. This is the position that the Capitals are in. If you're an everydayer of the show, you know I talked about it. Of course, the Capitals had up to the trade deadline to make any additions, and after that, that's it. I mean, you can make call-ups from Hershey, but that's it, and that is the position that the Capitals are in. But where we're going to start tonight is in net. Who is going to start in game 1? Is it going to be LT? Is it going to be Charlie Lindgren? Let's dive into that in this first segment. So who will be the starting netminder? And it's one of the things that is a big question, but Spencer Carbery is keeping us in suspense with his mystery announcement saying, quote, "You will find out tomorrow night." And to be clear, here as a guy that covers the team, I would be most surprised if Logan Thompson is in the mix, being that he has missed a substantial amount of time. It does seem to me that he would like to ramp up to get ready to go, because I think that's not fair for the Capitals. I don't think that is fair for Logan Thompson. So my hunch is, at least not too surprising, is that it will be Charlie Lindgren in game 1. So an interesting thing in how the Capitals will proceed. So is it going to be Logan Thompson or Chucky? Let's break it down. Logan Thompson's comeback first up. We have Logan Thompson. He has shown impressive progress in recovering from that upper body injury he sustained all the way back on April 2nd. And that is the big reason why I think that even if he is quote unquote good to go, I think that they would be wise to go with a guy that's already warmed up, that's been throwing some rounds in the bullpen. That is why I think that Chucky is the best option. But during a game against the Carolina Hurricanes, although he missed the last 7 regular season games, Thompson has returned to practice and looks fully engaged as we head into the playoffs. And you take a look at it, his season stats are hard to overlook. He finished with a record of 31 wins, 6 losses, and 6 overtime losses, which comes with a goals against average of 2.49 and a save percentage of 910. But, you know, I don't want to be a revisionist here. I also remember that Logan Thompson wasn't playing some of his best hockey before he got injured. So that's the one thing to remember, is that he's injured. You know, he was one of the front runners for the Vezina, along with Connor Hellebuck, these kind of players like that. But even before his injury, he was not playing some of his best hockey in net. Plus, 2 shutouts. So he's if you take a look at his full body of work, not too bad. It's important to note that his performance dipped towards the season end, where he had a 3.33 goals against average and an 877 save percentage in his last 15 games. And that, I think, is more important than anything else, in my opinion, because, you take a look at what he has accomplished in the full season, and it looks good. Like I said, one of the front runners for the Vezina, but he has dipped, and there was never that rebound. So any rebound that is there is hypothetical or theoretical, that he is going to bounce back. And, there was a lot of questions surrounding Logan Thompson and his lengthy contract by some people. I know at the time everyone was singing his praises, but there were some people that questioned, that's a long time to sign up a netminder. I'm not saying that he's not going to have that rebound, but there is a question since we saw that slump. But even with his late season slump, many still view him as one of the top goalies in the league, as he saved 26 more goals than expected, according to advanced metrics. So that is where Charlie Lindgren comes into the mix. And it's interesting that going into the season, they didn't want to list a favorite number 1 and number 2, or a 1 and 1A, however you want to look at it. But Logan Thompson was the guy to get the big contract first. And then Charlie Lindgren settled, I guess I'm going to go ahead and say settled for a smaller contract with less term. But it's interesting that he is kind of reprising his role that he had last season when it was Darcy Kemper who was the number 1 in net. Once again, it's Charlie Lindgren to save the day. Now, Charlie Lindgren's recent form now, let's shift to Chucky. He has been quite active recently, starting 5 of the Caps' last 7. So he's fresh. That's what I'm talking about. And I think that freshness comes into focus. And you take a look in the month of April, he wrapped up with a record of 4-2, but his goals against average sat at 3.11 and his save percentage of 881. Lindgren has showed he can handle the pressure, having an almost even split with playing against Montreal this season, proving he can be a reliable backup. And I think that is the one thing you want to underline, backup when needed. Now, many people point to Chucky, and I've maintained my position that the Capitals would not have made it to the playoffs last year had it not been for Charlie's really great play. But one of the things that was said is that he was tired. So what was different this year is they bounced back and forth. It was Logan Thompson, it was Charlie Lindgren. So it does appear that Charlie is more fresh. But talking about playoff experience and challenges, as an interesting angle as we gear up for the playoffs is the limited playoff experience both of those goalies have. I'm talking LT and I'm talking Charlie Lindgren. But that's kind of true for the Canadiens as well, that there is not a lot of playoff experience in the bunch. Lindgren faced struggles last postseason, making 4 starts, going 0 for 4, a goals against average of 358 and a save percentage of 864. Now, to be clear here, that was not the best defense that was playing in front of Logan or Charlie Lindgren back then. So those are all factors to consider. Now, unfortunately, those numbers contributed to the team's early exit against the Rangers. Conversely, Thompson entered the playoffs last year with the Golden Knights, posting a more encouraging 2-2, so 500, with a 2.35 goals against and a 921 save percentage. So there's no clear Braden Holtby in the mix. There's no Philip Grubauer. I'm talking, Philip Grubauer back in 2018, not present day, that is going to come in and save the day. It's going to be Logan Thompson, an unproven commodity in the postseason. Charlie Lindgren, who is not posting really great numbers in the postseason. A lot of questions. And then, you widen the lens even a little bit more if, in fact, Logan Thompson isn't in the mix on Monday night, that it's Clay Stevenson, who has next to no NHL experience. So it is going to be a tough thing here. So you take a look at it, who is going to be in net. He sat out during the playoffs due to injury while the Golden Knights made their championship run. Talking about LT there. Now, third goaltender on the roster on the playoff alongside Thompson and Lindgren is Clay Stevenson, and he has 1 game under his belt. That was the most recent outing against the Penguins, which, all things considered, I think he looked pretty good. Kevin Weeks talked in the broadcast, and he knows a thing or two about net minding, that he looked pretty good. He made some great saves, one against Sidney Crosby. I think it was his first save. But what is that going to mean against some elite goal scorers that the Habs have? Now, with the Hershey Bears securing a first-round bye in the Calder Cup, Stevenson is set to focus on being ready for any emergencies that may arise for the Capitals. So that is like what I talked about. This is it. This is the lineup. It's Logan Thompson, who was lightning in a bottle all season and then dipped before he got injured. And Charlie Lindgren this season, all things considered, 30,000-foot view, wide-angle lens, pretty good. Not great, not outstanding, but pretty good, I guess is what I'm going to say. And Clay Stevenson, again, no real postseason experience, not a lot of NHL experience. So a lot of questions that are going to have to be answered on Monday. Of course, keep it to Locked On Capitals, as I will have you guys cover the whole way. And all transparency, I'm recording this at 11 p.m. On Sunday night. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about another intriguing name that's injured. Alexe Protas, putting up career numbers, 30 goals this season, the most ever in his career. What's the latest on Pro? I'll discuss straight ahead. The Stanley Cup playoffs are here, and if you've ever been in a live NHL playoff game, it's unlike anything else. The intensity, the speed, the energy in the building, it's next level. And thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets, even for those must-see matchups. Prices actually drop as puck drop gets closer, and with last-minute deals, you can save up to 60%. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. They're all-in pricing shows the total cost up front, so there's no surprises at checkout. The app even shows you panoramic seat views, so you know exactly what you're getting before you buy. And with Game Time ticket coverage, I know I'm protected, whether it's a cancellation protection, job loss assurance, or their 24-hour return guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So career numbers and a breakout season for several different Capitals players this season. I'm talking Alexe Protas. I'm talking Tom Wilson, Connor McMichael, career numbers. And don't touch this team. We don't want to mess up the pH balance of the Capitals. So the Capitals pushed all their chips in, save Anthony Beauvillier, and that's the position that they're in. Oh, but there's some bad news there, is that Alexe Protas got injured due to a cut from a skate and is a bit of a question mark. Will we even see him in the first round of the playoffs? And why that's important? Well, of course, if you don't win the first round, well, you're setting up tea time other than worrying about the second round. So that's what we're going to dive into. The latest with Pro, a big name player, like I say, grow by leaps and bounds, a tall man, a guy that is good in front of the net, looking for second, third opportunities, screening the netminder. But there is some good news. Aliaksei Protas made his way back to the ice on Sunday, supporting a powder blue. This is the hard part, though. Non-contact jersey. Now, to be clear here, he could shed that non-contact jersey at a moment's notice, but as was some footage from MedStar today, they kind of said, make your assessment. He's skating kind of gingerly in a non-contact jersey. I'm going to go ahead and say he's not going to be in game one. Now, although he skated alone and left before the team hit the ice, this is a promising step if you're a glass half full kind of guy or girl. So the latest on his injury update for those who might not remember, Protas has been sidelined since April 4th. after suffering a skate to his foot during a game against the Blackhawks. And that was a tough moment. His everything was going so well for Protas this year, and his return to skating means he's on the right path. But I think you should temper expectations because we have to be patient as he works towards getting cleared for game action. So on Sunday, powder blue, non-contact, not skating with the team. The odds of him going from that to game ready Monday night is not good. So it's typical for players to start off this way, skating solo in a non-contact setup before they're integrated back into full team practices and complete with contact drills. So the big thing, game 1 and 2 is at Cap One. The Capitals, if they want a good chance of winning this, they could take game 1 and 2 because then it goes to Bell Center and that place gets rowdy and that team has not made it to the playoffs for a while. So we want to be all in. Spencer Carbery is the guy that knows. Was pretty tight-lipped during his recent press conference, not providing specific updates on Pro and, well, Logan Thompson, Marty Faravari, amongst others. So this is kind of the standard book. Sometimes coaches are very transparent during the season, but this is playoff hockey. This is what it's all about. You eat, breathe, walk, and talk. All of that, all during the regular season for this moment right now, the playoffs. So sometimes coaches don't want to tip their hand. Now, as the Capitals gear up for their first round playoff series against the Habs on Monday, the lineup remains a bit of a mystery. So it is a tough thing, and we're just going to have to be patient. So why does Protas's return matter? If you take a look at last season, he really came into his own, posting a career high, this season, posting a career high 30 goals, 36 assists, and totaling 66 points in 76 games. And with an exceptional play at 5-on-5 and his contributions on the PK, he finished third in the NHL. And plus minus, his presence could be a game changer for the Capitals as they head into the playoffs. And my assessment is still the same, that Ryan Leonard, I've been all a part of it. He has shown growth. He's been involved. He has one empty netter, but he is not the guy that we thought. 30 goals for Boston College. I think that we were going to see a snapshot of that on the Capitals. And, the thing of it is, it's jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. He's going from Boston College to the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think that when Protas comes back, that Ryan Leonard will be a healthy scratch, but without, a more viable option, I think Leonard stays in the mix until Protas comes back. Again, things could change. Say Ryan Leonard plays in game 1 and scores a couple goals or some assists, those kind of things, that could game change everything. But for right now, that is the thing. Protas, huge, has been huge. We need him in the game, 30 goals, at least in the first round of the playoffs. Because again, if you don't win the first round, it's over. Protas needs to be in. I hope that this injury can progress quicker than some people are saying. All right, so coming up here after the break, the uncertainty continues. Marty Faravari with Ethan Bear getting called up. Does that indicate that Martin Faravari won't be in the mix? I'll discuss straight ahead. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with a Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops, and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and auto low latency mode advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay and lightning fast speeds you need to stay competitive. Now, with 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and much more. Play a high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost on this console. So head to Head to Amazon.com, Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So this episode could be summarized as uncertainty. In the first segment, LT, the second segment, Protas, and now in the third and final segment, the status of Martin Fehérváry. And does the call-up from Ethan Bear indicate that Marty Fehérváry might not be in the mix on Monday? So let's dive into that in the final segment of the show. Ethan Bear, from the Hershey Bears, got called up. This decision comes on the heels of a tough regular season finale against the Pens, where the Capitals were down to just 5 defensemen due to injury. And we've seen some players miss time for maintenance. Roy Carlson was out of the mix for a while there, and you kind of wonder if it was maintenance or if they're dinged up and they didn't want to know. In any event, add Martin Fehérváry's name to the mix. One of the players on the sideline suffered an ankle injury in a previous game against the Islanders and missed practice leading up to the playoffs. Plus, John Carlson and Matt Roy, like I talked about, were rested for that last regular season matchup. And Carlson, the Minute Monster, we know what he means. Matt Roy has been an absolute steal for the Capitals on the blue line, making it second level. Now, Ethan Bear is a name that should be rather familiar. There was a lot of hype when he was first acquired, like, oh my God, this is the face of the future of the blue line. And it didn't go according to the script. He entered into the players' assistance program and ended up going down to Hershey. But with that said, being an accurate assessor, or trying to be, is that Ethan Bear has really popped off the page in the American League, leading the team with an impressive 46 points, 10 goals, 36 assists over 62 games. Now, it's not just that. The accolades, that performance earned him a well-deserved spot on the AHL's second All-Star team. Although he played primarily for the Caps last season, he was assigned to Hershey during training camp last October and spent the entirety of this season in the AHL. But it's a good story. Worked on his game. He could have gave up. Things were looking kind of not so good for Ethan Bear for a while. That I'm glad that he found his way. Like I say, entering into that NHL Players Assistance Program and all that could indicate. I'm glad that he was able to turn his fortunes around. Now, he did not contribute 4 points in 24 games for the Capitals last season, or he did rather. Definitely a player to watch. But this is the tough part. And I've said this ad nauseum in this episode, that the Capitals did not go out and make any other big additions other than Anthony Beauvillier. This is what it is. It is Ethan Bear, a guy that, has some questions. He played very well this season with the Bears, but we saw question marks with him on the Capitals. How is that going to fare in the Stanley Cup final, right? That is the hard part here, or the first round of the Stanley Cup, rather. That is the hard part for me to quantify. And all of a sudden, you're going to see Dylan McIlrath in the mix, or Alex Alexiev, or Ethan Frank in the mix, potentially. This team was pretty bulletproof all season. Now it's got some bullet holes. And, are they going to be able to patch? And are those patches going to be good enough? And again, even talk about net minding. Logan Thompson, who was perceived to be a Vezina finalist and struggled even before his injury. So a lot of questions. This is not the right time. I think, you take Chris Patrick and Brian McClellan and all the people making the decisions there had a do-over. I think they probably would have tried to acquire more talent at the deadline. Stock that cupboard, like I said, because the cupboard was empty. I mean, they had Ethan Frank and they had Alexiev and McIlrath, so they had 3 players in the cupboard, and that's not going to get you through a storm. They should have gone out and acquired another player other than Anthony Beauvillier just to keep stocked in the cupboard. Now they don't have anyone except for any call-ups, black aces, those kind of things from Hershey. So it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be in the mix, who's not going to be in the mix. And again, we knew this. And everyone was talking about the vibes and all the silliness in the locker room tunnel. And we don't want to mess with that. We don't want to mess with this. Okay, don't mess with it. you pushed your chips in, let the cards fall where they may. So an interesting time for the Capitals, ultimately to see how they weather this storm. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. Now for your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.